It's Matt. We're back with a restaurant roundup, another expert. This is a deep dive, somebody I've had on before. Jason will be back in 1 second to talk biz. So, Jason, I'm bummed I can't find your book on the shelf. Somebody in the building's got it, but tell us who you are, a little bit about yourself, and you've got probably the best title ever for a book. Please don't sleep with the host. And I'm going to ask you, please don't sleep with me. My wife might get mad, but we're good there.
Right. You look good in orange. Please don't sleep with the host. So Jason Berkowitz, longtime restaurant operator, started at Burger King at 14, been in the business, had the pleasure of working with some great mentors and opportunities. It took me all the way up through fine dining, opening up restaurants for Tom Colicchio, incredible operators, to becoming the chief operating officer for Tokayo Organica and the Madera Group out in Los Angeles, Umami Burger. Yep. And where my sweet spot really became helping restaurants that had something unique and amazing, 1 or 2 up to 5 locations. How do we bottle it? How do we figure out what the soul of it is, the culture of it, but put these processes in place that we can actually scale this thing, infuse capital, grow locations, and really hold on to what the magic is. And that's something that I've had the pleasure of doing. Along the way, I realized that there's real through line of training throughout all of this. And this became the Tokayo way, the Umami way. I helped Gucci open up their first restaurant in the United States with Massimo Bottura chef. And so the Gucci way, it all was really the Jason Berkowitz way, which was, a collection of great mentors, yep, which became the Arrow Up way, that we've bottled now into arrowuptraining.com. And it's my online university with safety, compliance, supervisory coaching. Carrying over from the book, Please Don't Sleep with the Host, was a book that I wrote a couple of years back, available on Amazon, where it's pretty much a conversation amongst, we have a language in this business. So it's veteran leaders, managers, employees. It's just a drink at the bar at the end of the night talking about, best ways to run a business, 50 quick tips, kind of like a bathroom reader. And it's saying, I get that some of the best have done that, but it's best not to. And really, so it's sort of a how-to book written in our narrative, in our counterculture. Obviously, with Me Too and all of this, there's some real serious discussions to be had about this, but this was more so talking about just ways of really keeping a solid culture, and respect.
Yeah, and that's what I want to talk about today, because I think now we're getting back to somewhat of normalcy. Certain parts of the country are back full swing. Certain parts are getting there. Employees are back. As unemployment runs out and things change in the country, I think within 3, 4, 5 months, we'll be back to fully staffed restaurants, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Hopefully. Yeah.
But the one thing I see that has happened a lot in the restaurant business the last year is the culture was completely disrupted, because a lot of them, that staff that was awesome and in place and rocking 2 years ago is now disbanded, and it's piecework getting a restaurant to run right now is tough. I had a friend of mine that came by the office. They were talking to me. He was talking about table touches because he heard I talked about that the other day, and he said, "Hey, I was at a restaurant last night and we had this, and this happen." And he goes, "You know what? I didn't complain though, and I didn't say anything because I know that they're struggling just to have people to get the job done right now. And I understand that things aren't going to go correctly. But I think that's going to introduce exactly what you talk about back into the workplace. And all of a sudden now you've got a staff that might not be indoctrinated and might think, hey, this is a frat house. Let's have fun." And there's a lot of danger in that, whether it's just culture, whether it's safety among employees. So I guess talk about a couple of things that resonate with you and that you think restaurants really need to be paying attention to as we get back to workforces.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. So not a plug per se, but to kind of dive in quickly, we made a course for free, and we'll share the link there if you'd like. Yeah. Working together. It's a 15-minute course that my company made, basically teaching the 101s of new restaurant employees. I mean, now from 16 to 19 is the average age, first-time restaurants. I think it's 60% or whatever of the workforce. And so I think there's a real opportunity to say, okay, let's teach the basics of what our expectations are internally, because you're right, whether being indoctrinated previously, we can kind of huff and puff a little bit about why not, or why did people leave, but here's a blank slate. And we look at that, right? Why did they leave and what's coming back? I think starting off with a baseline. So there's about, the power of balance, why your mood matters, what is EQ, what's effective communication, how to de-escalate, conflict. And so we put together this quick, brief 15-minute course that we're giving away for free because I'm like, listen, rising tide lifts all ships. These are all these community restaurants that are out there. These are our kids, our friends' kids, our friends that are teenagers working here. They're coming into a place. I think it's really important that we lay down the groundwork of these are the expectations, just like I did with the book, Please Don't Sip Those. It's just, again, stay, why be on the floor in front of, you should be on the floor instead of the back office. Hey, why moods matter? Why, what is our role as a teammate all comes together in this community spot. Now I'm going to flip it real quick. I think we should begin a campaign. Let's do this now. Thank you Thursdays or whatnot. I think there's also the real responsibility of the community when they come in to have a two-way street of hospitality.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you want to support your community, the United States, Main Street, anything, these are small businesses. Yeah. These are, again, teenagers and different people that are in there. We want to help them mature. We want to give them the right energy that they can pass off. So I actually believe as we come back, it's about establishing the foundation of our expectations of working together, right? You're at a job.
Yep.
And also as the community, what's our responsibility? I'd love that to be something that grows out of the pandemic, that we have just as much responsibility to be nice to the people that are taking our order, because that's getting them to stay around. That's building the community. That's educating each other and indoctrinating each other on culture, community, which is the ultimate culture.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think, going on to the community part of it, it's this past year has been tough. I mean, I've caught myself before being in a restaurant, being in a retail company, and you're in a hurry. You think it needs to happen now. It needs to happen this way. And you don't realize that that's like my 17-year-old started working at a pizza place 3 weeks ago. You don't realize it started 2 days ago. They probably didn't get trained correctly. But then you also think about, like, it's tough. You got to stop yourself and say, okay, let's take the different angle here. But we've also become impatient because this device right here has caused us all to not embrace. Cal Newport, Deep Work calls it embracing boredom. A lot of us have become accustomed to not embracing boredom. We expect shit to happen now and always have something going on, so we're always in a hurry. But, you think about it also from the teenager side. Think of the impressions. I mean, a lot of adults embarrass the hell out of me. Yeah. Think of that 16, 17, 18-year-old that's in the workforce for the first place, and they're waiting on your table, and you're a jackass, and you're 50 years old, and they're thinking, maybe they're in their mind like, man, this is normal. This is how I'm supposed to act in 20. This is what's expected. This is what's in the business. And it's not. It's just people have become kind of unbearable in the retail world to some extent. Hopefully, a lot of things are getting past that, but it's been tough.
What's interesting is for our training company, we got brought in last year around May. We got brought into Santa Monica, became a content partner of the city of Santa Monica, and Santa Monica College hired us to teach kids how to communicate with empathy to those that were screaming about not wanting to wear their mask or various things. And they were berating these kids on the front line. And so we came in and made a course to teach them the tools to just yes and, as opposed to conflict or trying to convince somebody what's right or what's wrong, just getting them to be on our side. And so one of the ways that techniques that we taught that was effective was, hey, you want us to be around, right? Absolutely. And you're here on our side as we're trying to stay open. Of course. Well, look, we need this. The government's asking us to do this. Can you help me out? So I think as people come back, we want to find somewhat of this common thread. And I think community and helping them is important. And I'm going to touch on something real quick, without getting too in the weeds on this. Obviously, there's stoked rhetoric and divisiveness going on and some real problems that are happening in the United States. But somebody wrote an article that I hadn't thought about, which was really the trauma of it all. And that everyone had a different COVID, or many people that had different ones. And some aren't recognizing the trauma of it, even if they were at home, that other people had, that they had. And are we taking it out on other people because we haven't faced it and dealt with it and communicated about it. So I hope that this is an opportunity to disarm this like grandiose feeling, to say this is kind of screwed up what we all went through. For some, it was more than others. We're having a hiring crisis. How do we help? Community all agrees upon, we don't want for rent signs on our main street. We also don't want big box stores coming in and taking over the local pizza shop that teaches your 17-year-old son about values and work ethics and various things, and hopefully complements what's happening in the home. How do we come together? And I think a lot of it is taking a step and thinking, before I react, how am I contributing towards something? How do I disarm the expectation that everyone's perfect? No, this is messed up. So how do I help with kindness? Sure, we don't want to wait for 2 hours and be treated incorrectly, but we have to recognize it. We have to face it, and then take actual steps of talking softer the louder that people get, and really finding our center of gravity. Meditation, drinking enough water. Let's go back to basics.
Yeah, there's, you mentioned earlier the conflict, conflict resolution. I was involved, I'm sure we all were, I was involved in the complete opposite of that, when it went completely the wrong way. Back this past spring, where there was a situation where, masks weren't required. I didn't even have one on me. They weren't in the place we were at. There was nobody had them. And I walked in a store that happened that you want to be in here, have one on. I was even in the store, I was leaning against the door. And a girl walks up to me and my wife and says, "You will put a mask on right now." And this is like a 16-year-old. And I'm like, oh man, you don't realize you just said to my wife, shit's going to go wrong way here. And it was wild, because a week before I'm in Vegas, and a guy walks up and goes, "Hey brother, I need your help with something." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Man, they're walking around. They're on us all the time. This mask thing. Will you do me a favor, throw a mask on?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." Put it on. Hung out in the store for 20 minutes. We talked business. I bought some stuff. Yeah. But it was night and day. And a lot of times I think what's happened is that comes down to the key role of management of a business, of understanding how to, teach your people, because everybody's got a different mindset. Like you said, everybody's been affected by different things. Certain things affect others in different ways. And then some people come from different households where they talk differently, they treat differently. So I think one of the things with restaurants, especially when you get these workforce in, whether it's teenagers, whether it's 45-year-olds, they've got to know what your culture is. They've got to know how you want to engage people, and then how you want to engage your coworkers as well. Because that's another aspect. You got people from both sides of it working in a bar. I was at an AT&T store last night where the lady next to me had 2 masks on, and the other employee had no mask. And so I'm sure there's a different thought process there on something.
Yeah, 100%. And so it's a combination to me of what I'm hearing is, I do think it's part of the store, but also they're running around. They're trying to just keep the lights on. Yep. Part of it is at the home, teaching people the respect of the communication. And part of it is in the community of leading by example, to let them know. So, right, who taught this person how to communicate correctly? At the home, what was the conversation at work? Did they ever address that? And that is where my company, Arrow Up Training, comes in. That's why I decided to build these scalable models, is because I'm like, here, you can't let me just be a bolt-on that helps make sure that this is covered. We'll help the human aspect. We'll help the social skills. We'll help with the human side of things and steps of service, but while they're working on the things that are unique. So that's 100% why I think our training is so vital and important. And with that is the community of the response of how we're talking with them. And it's learning. It's just learning that if I want behavior from somebody, what am I looking at, how I'm approaching that person? And that's what's so big. So the way that they approach you, view better, it activates defense in you. It's guttural, right? Why are you talking to me this way? What's the expectations? Now you're my enemy, as opposed to you're my friend. And in the end, we all really agree on a lot more. And so I think that's really key,
Yeah, I think some of that comes down to, I almost wish there was a way to train consumers, because I think you mentioned something there. Businesses, small businesses in general, restaurants especially, retail, they've survived a pretty tough deal the past 12 to 14 months. And they've put in a lot of hard, long work. And I don't think that the average consumer realize, they all think that anybody that owns a business, you own one Subway, you own a steakhouse, you own the building I'm in, which I own, you're a millionaire. You've got money coming out your ears. There's no stress. It's cake. They don't realize what's happening behind it. You know what? You might be 1 week away from negative cash flow. You might be 1 month away from giving up and being done. You might be killing it. But I think that consumers have been trained, and they think that you walk into a Chipotle, and Chipotle is owned by a huge corporation. Well, they assume that every store is just like that. Whereas like a friend of mine who's got a couple restaurants, he'll pop into his reviews and talk about, hey, my bad, you had a bad experience. I'd love to fix it. I live down the street, and actually we go to the same church together. I've seen you there before.
Right.
And they're like, oh, crap, yeah. There's a person there in my community that's working their butt off.
And we stay focused on one subject, but once you start to go, I'll tend to pull on other threads. I think that grows into the larger conversation as well of, as we come out in this new business model that we're all trying to figure out. And I where unions want to come in and not come in. Obviously, you have in hotels and in small businesses, their hands aren't in it as much. But I think there's an opportunity without that, without the organizations, to be a little bit more transparent, to find a way that your employees know, okay, we want to pay you a living wage. It comes from here, or help us get higher sales. That I think there's an opportunity to without divulging your full P&L and anything where I'm obviously old school of where the numbers are sensitive, opening it up and saying, we're not, your average Subway is a 3 to 6% profit margin, that this is what's going on, and letting people know where they fit. It's really key, as we talk to, people as we're talking about another shutdown in LA now, or things like that. And we talk to city council and all these people, one things I say is, don't mistake the CEO of Taco Bell with the CEO of our local taco shop. Like you're assuming that everyone's living in this grandiose thing, yeah. and they need to pay a fair wage, and they're stealing. Everybody's stealing. If you don't have tip credit, you're stealing. Yeah. Or no, they're at 6%. They're a profit margin. A lot of people don't know that for every dollar you're paying an extra 5 to 7% of just workers' comp, and then you're paying a payroll tax. And oh wait, when I say it's $15 an hour, which I'm a fan for a living wage, and also I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, understanding the model, that actually that's $20 an hour when you think of the plus on top of all the stuff that comes along with it. So, and then all the things that shape into it, the nuances. Now look, if we're going to educate the consumer, we're going to try to find common ground. You can't get too nuanced. You've got to have a couple good bold prints. So to me, I think it's about saying, think of your restaurant as a community. Think of your restaurant employees as the local community, the daughters, they're playing baseball with your friends, your kids, and that it's cyclical, or it's all holistic and connected. And, assume they're working, 80 plus to 100 hours a week to keep this thing going. But they love it when it works right. Why? Why would somebody do that business? Because you know what? It's awesome. Vibe is incredible. I'd rather talk to you about your local restaurant than I would about my favorite band. Yeah. It's just amazing. And it's the fabric of America.
Yeah. Food brings us together. Food can bring any mix of people together and put anybody on common ground. It's a place where we relieve stress, a place where we celebrate, a place where we drown our sorrows. And at the end of the day, there's nothing better as a business owner of seeing people enjoy the product, of seeing people have a smile and enjoy it. And that makes it all worth it. So hopefully we're en route to there.
Yeah. And there's the plate and there's the vibe. And one thing, if any restaurant owner is watching this of any kind, I want them to walk back into their spot and think, from an employee who starts their first day, because they're teenagers working up, to the lights. Of course, if you're an owner, you're freaking out about the lights and the music and the temperature and the spot on the wall. It's just, and that's in the book. Please, I'm like, hey, just know that's what your owner's thinking about, But what's the overall vibe? And what can you do to make it that your team wants to be there? Because if your team wants to be there, your community wants to be there. And it all becomes this connected, these dots get connected.
Yep. Cool. I love it. I enjoyed the conversation. Where's the training you mentioned today? Is it on arrowup.com?
Yeah. Arrowuptraining.com.
Arrow training. Yeah.
Arrowuptraining.com. So we've got anti-harassment training that we made just for restaurants, because that I think is an incredible opportunity to establish your baseline of ground and have, they're not cheesy reenactments. They're talking about the way we talk. We've got safety because everybody, OSHA, whistleblower complaints are up. This is a time to lead into safety. You have to, it's mandatory. And soft skills, teaching supervisors. I think there's a real opportunity to teach the supervisors, these 18 to 23-year-olds, about how to manage their friends. So that, I think, is, by the way, secret to everything. Train them. They are on the front lines. They will be there to support their teammates. They will support their leaders. It's all about those first-time supervisors. Don't just give them a pair of keys and a code to void food. Yep. Like literally teach them about how to communicate with each other. And then a free course, scroll to the bottom, working together.
Cool.
Click on the link, give it to everybody, let them take it, learn about effective communication.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you again, and look forward to talking more in the future.
I love what you're doing, man. It's great. So I really appreciate it as well.
Cool. Thanks, Jason.